Most people don't miss the target because they're not aiming. They miss because they're aiming in the wrong direction. And worse, they think they're right. Chapter 71 of the Tao Te Ching. To know unconsciously is best. To presume to know what you don't is sick. Only by recognizing the sickness of sickness is it possible not to be sick. The sage's freedom from ills was from recognizing the sickness of sickness, so they didn't suffer from sickness. This is the danger that Lao Tzu warns us about in chapter 71. He writes, "To know unconsciously is best. To presume to know what you don't is sick." What he's pointing to isn't just ignorance. It's ignorance of our ignorance. It's thinking we've got it figured out when we haven't even begun to listen. And in a world that rewards noise, speed, and certainty, this is a radical teaching. Real wisdom doesn't shout, it doesn't perform, and it doesn't need to prove anything. True wisdom moves from awareness, not ego. And when you move from awareness, you're less likely to walk straight into mistakes that could have been avoided. Think of it this way: a person who is truly aware doesn't need to touch the fire to know it burns. They can feel the heat before the damage. They can sense the shift in the air before the storm. And because of that sensitivity, they live with far fewer regrets. Let me tell you a story. Years ago, I worked with a young athlete who had all the talent in the world. He was fast, powerful, and had an incredible instinct for the game. But he lacked one thing: awareness. Not just the awareness of the field or the fight, but the inner awareness that keeps a person in tune with their habits, moods, and triggers. He would overtrain, ignore pain, skip his breath work, and tell himself, "I know my body." And yet, every time he said those words, it was like a blind man claiming to see. Eventually, the predictable happened. A major injury, not a freak accident, but a slow-build stress fracture from repeated strain, poor recovery, and emotional imbalance. After the surgery, he told me, "I don't know why this happened. I did everything right." But that's just it. He thought he did everything right. He presumed to know. This is the sickness Lao Tzu speaks of. Thinking you know when you don't. Acting from that illusion. And then wondering why the path keeps breaking underneath your feet. The Taoist solution is not to acquire more information. It's to remove what blocks you from seeing clearly. That's what meditative practice is about. Every time you sit in stillness, every time you breathe with intention, every time you return to the present moment, you're cleaning the mirror, you're seeing your mind more clearly. And with a clear mind, your path becomes clear. You don't need to be certain. You need to be aware, and awareness can be cultivated. This is what I call the path of preventative wisdom. It's how you avoid mistakes before they're made. You sense the off rhythm in your breath before the panic. You catch the tightening of your jaw before the argument. You notice the creeping fatigue before the injury. You see the craving for validation before the social media binge. You stop the avalanche by noticing the snow shift. That's power. And here's where the teaching gets even deeper. Lao Tzu says, "Only by recognizing the sickness of sickness is it possible not to be sick." In other words, you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to see everything all the time. You just need to recognize your blind spots, to admit what you don't know, to stay curious instead of closed. In many ways, it's like martial arts. The moment you think you've mastered a technique, you stop improving it. The moment you assume you can't be caught, you lower your guard. But the masters, the true sages, they remain beginners in their mind. They stay open, they stay humble, and they continue refining. That's why their mistakes are rare, because they keep seeing the small signs. They keep asking questions. They keep learning. The meditative arts give us the tools to live this way. They train us to observe rather than react. to yield rather than force, to pause rather than assume. And in that pause is everything. That pause is what gives you space. Space to redirect, space to question, space to not go down the same old path. Let's return to the athlete from earlier. After his injury, he began to shift. He started incorporating breath work. He journaled his moods and tracked his energy. He used standing meditation as a reset, especially on days he didn't feel like it. And slowly, he stopped training from ego and started training from awareness. The result? No more injuries, greater consistency, and a presence on the field that made him not just fast, but smart. He became a leader, not by barking orders, but by being. That's what Chapter 71 is calling us toward. A way of being that doesn't rush to declare, a wisdom that doesn't pretend, a presence that sees what others miss. Now let's make this actionable. Here's a simple awareness ritual you can use today to live this lesson. Try this awareness reset. 1 minute stillness, sit or stand comfortably. Close your eyes, let your breath settle, just observe, don't try to change anything. 2, don't know inquiry, 2 minutes. Ask yourself, what am I assuming right now that might not be true? What am I avoiding seeing clearly? Where have I closed the door on new possibilities? No need to answer perfectly. Just ask and listen. Let the awareness rise. 3, grounding breath, 2 minutes. Inhale slowly through your nose for 4 seconds. Exhale gently through the mouth for 6 to 8 seconds. As you breathe out, say silently, I see clearly. Repeat for 10 to 12 rounds. This entire practice takes less time than a commercial break, but done consistently, it sharpens your awareness like nothing else. It rewires your nervous system to pause, observe, and choose wisely. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is presence. And presence comes from knowing that you don't know everything, from staying humble, open, and aware. So remember the lesson of Chapter 71. When you recognize the sickness of sickness, you're already healing. When you admit you don't know, you start to know deeply. When you see clearly, you act wisely. And wise action avoids the pain that comes from blind certainty. Stay humble, stay aware, stay open. And if this message landed for you, like the video or subscribe to the channel. There's more to explore, and the path ahead is clearer than you think.